I've always been interested in justice issues generally. I'm really particularly interested at the moment in pursuing the idea of climate justice for Australians. When I was 11, David Bowie came to Coonabarabran to film the music video Let's Dance, and he decided to make that a big statement about racism. I remember how shocked I was when I finally realised what was going on and that he was probably right to choose my town in the middle of nowhere for that particular video, and it was a real wake-up call. It was a kind of a jolt to my system. A place like Coonabarabran where we have a beautiful and ancient First Nations culture that I was very lucky to experience growing up. And the Warrumbungle Mountains, which are very, very precious to me. I'm heavily motivated by the fate of my children and my grandchildren. That comes first. But I'm also motivated by those justice issues I've always been motivated by. So I guess that connection to land makes a focus on climate change really natural for me. It feels very natural. Why should First Nations people who've looked after this land so beautifully for so many thousands of years have to pay the price of climate impacts now? Why should young people pay the price of a climate future that they didn't help create? Why should women who are locked out of political processes have to bear the brunt of climate impacts? That doesn't seem fair. So there's a lot of inequity, and it drives me to try and think about how we can bring a justice lens to the current climate debates. My own story makes me want to take the opportunity that I had, that I never should have had, and try to do the most with it. I guess for people who have very narrow options, who don't get good quality information, who don't have great access to technology, who just feel like the world is not designed in their interests. We need to step up, particularly for future generations and for vulnerable people now. The Climate Justice Observatory is the idea that fair transitions should start local, and they should start now. The idea is that people need great information to make the best decisions about how to deal with climate adaptation in their own neighbourhood. It was influenced or inspired by the idea of the Syrian Human Rights Observatory, which is where ordinary people pool their resources to come up with great solutions to the problems they're having in an armed conflict. It's based on the idea of human hope and connectedness, and I wanted to build an idea like that into climate adaptation here in our state so that people could feel connected, could feel hopeful, and could have the very best quality information that they could trust on which to start building some solutions. We have to just be really focused on bringing everybody with us to make sure that no one is left behind and that people are lifted up and able to adapt. Just genuinely sitting with people, blank slate, what do you think climate justice issues are for you and your community? And I found that maybe people didn't have a strong idea of how those two things fit together. So they knew about social injustice in their own communities, but they weren't sure about how it would turn out for them. And they weren't sure in particular what they would do about it. So that's my dream, that this makes a contribution to that conversation. It helps people with good information and education. It's not to say that it's not going to be a difficult road, but we can meet these challenges as a community with fairness inbuilt in them. If the pandemic's taught us anything, is that you have to go forward as a community to help the most vulnerable, and we just need to take that ethos into this next challenge. So if you're an organisation in Queensland that cares about human rights and climate change, we're looking for you. We're interested in creative partnerships as well, artists, poets, filmmakers, journalists, people who want to use stories to help us take people on that journey towards climate justice. And we're also interested in just people who want to learn and be part of our community. We really want you to get involved and to feel like it's a safe and brave space to get involved in climate action.